Hello everybody, Izzy once again here. Going to go over some inverse kinesmatic. I think that's how you pronounce the word, I'm not exactly sure. It's a very hard word to say. I'm going to go up to this little icon and look at it. Inverse kinematics. Very hard word to say. But anyway, that's the button that toggles it on and off. So what does this mean, IK? Well, IK, in a nutshell, let me go ahead and load a file. Let's go ahead this time and let's load up the good old do something different this time. Let's go ahead and load up the Megaton Gold here. Yeah, Gold MG. Alright. Well, here's the gold and looking pretty cool. There it goes. Walking out of my life. Going across the screen. Inverse kinematics, however you want to say it, is the controlling of many different parts by using a dummy controller to control one part. If I grabbed your finger and I pulled your finger as hard as I could forward, well, your finger's going to go with me, and so is your arm, and your elbow's going to bend, and your arm's going to go straight, and your shoulder is going to go straight, and you're going to have an arm pointing straight out. Same concept with using these dummy controllers in the inverse kinesmatic. Before we talked about forward kinematics, and that is basically doing it freehand, moving each individual part with the animate button on. This is different. All these starsiege Hercs, all these vehicles that came from starsiege were actually they were created by using this exact technique that I'm telling you about now. So let's take a look at the dummy controllers that control this gold. Very easy to get to. So we'll go up here to this thing with the red triangle and the blue cylinder behind it, and we're just going to click on unhide all. Okay, it's just telling me it couldn't find some stuff, and that's cool. That's cool. Well, this is a we'll notice right now that we have like a bunch of copies of the gold on top of each other here, and what you're looking at there is different levels of detail. Basically, every single level of detail shows up somewhere different in the game. Basically, a collision mesh detail will show up in that little icon up on your screen when you're getting shot and your leg is turning red and you can't figure out how you're going to outrun that shepherd, but somehow you prevail. That's where that comes in at. So if we go up here and we click on this list button here and we look at all of our different parts that we have, this is the different levels of detail, basically, that's the best way I can describe it, for the gold. We have a base A64, which would be our highest form level detail, and it just winds on down, D8, E4, and there's our collision detail. But what we want to work with right now, we don't need all this other stuff. So what we need to do is just, I'm going to select that, I'm going to hit the shift button and select everything except for this top level detail. I'll just delete it. Alright, right there is our top level detail gold. Now over here we have some things selected. We have lights, cameras, and helpers. Those are hidden by category. I want to unhide the helpers. And when I do so, what you see now is these little weird squares. Well, these are our helpers. These are our dummy controllers. This one right here should be either attached to the head or the pelvis, and these two are attached to the feet. They are what moves the gold in a nutshell. The gold itself has no animation. All the animation of the gold in the game comes from those two squares on its feet. That big square at the top is basically to control the up and down motion of the head and everything that goes along with it. So basically when you take a step, of course, like let's think about if you're going to take a step. If you took a step right now, would you still be the same height as you was when you were standing with both legs put together? No, you would probably drop a couple inches. Same thing, gives a more realistic value. You drop the head, you drop the pelvis. So let's look at how these work. Well, we slide the animation bar. You can see as this goes up that the other foot stays stationary. That's because the other foot is bound to the particular IK of the box, of the dummy controller. It is bound to the dummy controller. And right here, this yellow thing beside it is a tape, which basically helps you as you animate control distance. And you can find those over here if you want to use one underneath this little thing that looks like a tape measure. See, there's tape right there. And there's point, and we used point in the last video we did. So what we have here is you see the goat as it walks by using the dummy controllers. And it's got a slide back. And the slide back is pretty easy to create. I didn't talk about it in the other video, and I wish I did. If you select your vehicle, let's just select all the parts of the goat. Edit, select all. Okay, if you hold the shift button down, for example, frame 0, if I hold the shift button down and I slide that up to example frame 25, then it's going to copy the stance from frame 0 to frame 25, which basically it's going to kind of do a whatever pose frame 24 is, it is going to make that pose go to the first pose at frame 0. And that's how they do these slide backs. See here, it'll come up and say create a key. So if I hold the shift button and I slide it up to 24, it's going to say, okay, your source time was 0, your destination time was 24. Do you want to create this key on 24? Okay, and that's how we get these slide backs. So for example, if I created a step from 0 to 20, and that was my first step, which it is the first step on all these particular Hercs, and I want it from that step to slide back, and I want to restart a new animation. Well, I can't just restart a new animation from that. I mean, I could go ahead and do another step, but I want to start a whole new animation. So what I would do is I would go to frame 0 to my initial pose, slide that up to, for example, 30, and then once I get to 30, I let off, hit OK, and look what happens. It goes right back to my first pose. And that's how we get these slide backs, see? And it slide backs, and it slide back. So what they did was they just used this technique to slide back and start a new animation. The animations are all kept within the sequences and the transitions in the track view. Track view is a library with all the keys that is used throughout the animation process. You can see here in the track view all the different types and all the different transitions. All these can be merged in from the existing Hercs. None of these were remanufactured from one Herc to another. I've looked at all of them. They were all merged in from one Herc to the next Herc, to the next Herc, to the next Herc. They did not redo these each and every time. For example, this particular run sequence, sequence 1 run. Okay, it says right here, object sequence. Okay, and it goes from frame 50 to frame about 70 something. I can zoom in and tell you it goes from 50 to about 74. And guess what? That is the run sequence from 50 to 74. And here's the walk sequence. The walk sequence goes from 0 to 40, and that is exactly the walk sequence, 0 to 40. But let's say yours went from, let's say your walk sequence went from 5 to 15. Well, all you'd have to do is slide this up to 15 and slide the 0 over to 5. And there you see how you can manipulate the track sequence in order to work with your particular vehicle. Here's another thing though. These wasn't manipulated by the guys, the Dynamics guys. These were merged in by going File and Merge, and then picking one of the existing vehicles, for example the Megaton Gold, and then all you have to do is just select all these sequences, select all these transitions, and hit OK, and it'll put them right in your scene. Okay? So that's just a little bit explanation on track view and a little bit of explanation on sliding keys backwards and forwards. Now what I want to talk about is getting your goat to walk like this one is. Look how nicely this walks with those dummy controllers pulling at its feet. It's not something that just happens though, okay? That takes a little bit of work. Number one thing we need to do for inverse kinematics is to set our restraints. Each leg of that goat has a restraint on it. And what I mean by restraint is your leg cannot fold backwards. If it did, you'd be weird. we need to take you to the hospital. Another thing that happens is your leg really can't fold past your hip. You can't fold your leg completely back, in an L shape behind your back, unless you're like some kind of circus freak or some kind of double jointed person. So that's what we are talking about. We talk about setting up limits. We need to set up our limits on how this can move and on what axis it can move, and can it move on a y-axis. Basically, right now, if you think about it, the only way this rotates is on a z-axis, which is swings backwards and forwards. We don't need that to go left and right because it would actually create a really weird animation. But on these Hercs, they did see they did see fit that they should put a little left and right action on them. But I don't do that when I animate, and maybe that's why I don't have a lot of luck so far. But I am doing pretty good. Don't worry about sliding joints. Forget that. We're talking about rotational joints. So let's go ahead and select the leg. Let's look at it. Okay. Now, one thing I'll tell you, I learned this from experience, negative is usually on this side. Whatever is on this side will move to the right. So if you click down on that, and you see how that kicks back to the right, not the left, the right. See how that kickbacks to the right? Well, that's as far as that leg will move to the right. All right, and if you see how far this one kicks to the left, you see how far that one kicks to the left? See, you can't put your leg over your head unless you double jointed. And but that's the limitations on that. It is active and it is limited, and it will ease into that limitation. The y-axis has no type of the y-axis has no type of use right now. It isn't even active at all, so it's not in use. We don't want that in use. And the z-axis isn't in use. So right now, all we have in use is the x-axis, which basically swings that leg forward and backwards. Okay? So the next thing we're going to have to look at, as in pertaining to this particular leg, is to go up to the link info. Okay, we have the leg, and it will move on an X, Y, Z axis, which means it'll move up and down, left and right, and sideways. But it will only rotate on a Z axis, which is swing backward and forward, and it will rotate on a Y axis. But because we have limited it here in this particular rotational joint limitation for IK, it will only move forward and backwards because we don't have these active. Another thing too I like to mention is the precedence. Precedence means one thing takes precedence over another. Now you'll notice that the leg has a precedence of, the leg has a precedence of 20. Now the calf has precedence of 30. And the foot has precedence of 40, if I ever can select it. It has precedence of 40. The foot has precedence over the calf and the leg, which means when it's pulled, the foot will be pulled first, and then the calf, and then the leg. And that's the only thing in this entire model that has any precedence. The APOC only has precedence on the leg. It's not even used on the foot or the calf, just to let you know. And I want to make reference to that. Okay, dummy controllers can be created very easily. All you have to do for a dummy controller is go to over here to the little tape measure again and click on dummy, and just make a dummy controller. Just drag you a square down right there. You can actually animate dummy controllers to make animations happen too. When you spin a dummy controller, let's say you wanted to make a wheel that spins in starsiege. We'll make a wheel, put the dummy controller in the middle of the wheel, and bind that dummy controller to the wheel. And I'll show you how we can do that. I'm not going to make a wheel, but I am going to make a box. And I'm going to make a box around the dummy, beside the dummy controller, okay? Alright, so there's the box. It's kind of not a very good box. But this is one way you can do animations if you want to do them really fast and kind of cheesy. And you can just bind that box to that dummy controller, okay? Now watch what happens when I click the animate button to frame 11. I'm going to spin the dummy controller, not the box. The dummy controller will control the box. So I'm spinning the dummy controller, okay? Now when I hit apply IK, what's going to happen to that box? Well, I guess absolutely nothing. Hold on a minute here. I have done wrong. I told you wrong. I have to bind the box to the dummy controller. I am sorry. and I'm going to stick it on frame 12, hit apply IK, and we should have absolutely nothing happen. Let me apply it to keys. Might have to select the box and the dummy controller. Hold the control button down to select more than one thing. Okay. Well, maybe it's because the gold takes precedence over, but it shouldn't. I don't know. Anyway, it says it's bound to nothing, and this says it's bound to the dummy one. So, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have the inverse kinesmatic tab selected at the top. That's a big boo-boo. Right here, inverse kinematics tab. You see that? Now, if the inverse kinematics tab is selected, it will inherit the actual movement of the box. So, let's try to rotate that one more time so we can get a better, I can show you what I'm talking about. Turn the animate button on. And let's rotate that box and see what happens when we actually move it back here and apply the IK. And hopefully it will not rotate. So it's not rotating, and I don't know why. But for sake of the video, I'm not going to fool with the box right now. What I am going to do is I am going to continue on explaining how this works. The feet of the gold right here, the feet of the gold are bound just like I tried to bind the box to this dummy controller. The feet of that gold are bound to these dummy controllers, and you can see right here where it says dummy left, I have the left foot selected, it is bound to the dummy left. I have the right foot selected, it is bound to the dummy right. Those dummy controllers control these legs, and these legs are all set up with IK restrictions so that they only move forward, and some of them move a little bit to the left and right, but not much. The feet usually have a little bit more of a play to them where they can kind of slide left and right, but in the case of this gold, they don't have much at all. Rotational joints, as you can see, are from 10 to 10 on the y-axis, which is very little, and on the z is not active. The reason they have the little bit on the y-axis is because at the end of the animation, when the gold turns, the feet need to turn a little bit themselves. I will actually stretch the length of this particular animation out to 250 so you can see that. Just bring up that little button thing that I showed you, put 250 in and hit enter. Now you can see all the animations of the gold. And what I want to show you is right here at the end, the gold will slide back. Well, hold on a minute, let me redo that. Put it on 250, hit enter. There we are. So you will see the gold run. There's the run sequence, okay. And there's the shutdown, the fall, and then there's the shutdown, and right here's the turn. Now watch the feet on the turn. They do actually kind of swivel a little bit on the y-axis. Excuse me. So the IK controllers are controlled. The dummies are the IK controllers. Now IK also means that the hierarchy of the gold is linked. For example, like I said, I'm going to select a foot of the gold and I'm going to move it on the y-axis, and I want you to see what happens when I pull it. I'm going to pull this foot. Look at that. Look how beautiful that is. See? I'm moving the gold's leg. And it makes it so much easier to animate if you wanted to animate your own vehicles in a certain way. I mean, that foot is sliding right across there, and it makes it a lot easier, you know, for say to pull this up to frame 20 and just to animate your own way. So we have to do restrictions, we have to do locks. One thing else we need to do is each particular part of the leg system and the parts that move are actually go to the motion tab right here, and you can see they have rotational keys. Whenever you get ready to edit your vehicle, make sure that you go to frame 0 and you go through the leg, the calf, and the leg, the calf, and the foot, and you click rotation while they're on frame 0 to give those particular items keys. You'll do that before you actually start assigning controllers to your particular moving parts is important too. You see linear bezier is applied to the leg. That is your position, rotation, and scale. We're not worried about scale. Bezier scale's fine. But rotation and position is important. Linear means they're going to move in a straight line. Basically, here's the calf, and it's going to be the same, linear bezier, and it's going to be the same for the foot. So the only thing that doesn't really keep a linear bezier movement is going to be your pelvis or head. I can't remember which one. Let me just select the pelvis and head. I'll go up here to my select tool, and I will find the pelvis, and I will select it, and you'll notice here that the pelvis is linear. Okay, so it does have some correlation with scale. I don't know why. I'll be honest with you, I have no idea, but you'll see that it has no rotational skills and there's no keys involved with it, so it's not involved in the animation of the vehicle at all. What actually moves these vehicles back and forth is the bases, the base A64. It's the same in all the Hercs. Also, these bounding boxes are pretty much the same in all the Hercs. One bounding box, which I'm talking about the things that move the feet, you can take those boxes and put them on the feet of the Apocalypse and it will walk. You can take those boxes and pretty much put them on the Emancipator and the Emancipator will walk. You may have to adjust them a little bit. You can put them on your starsiege Herc and it'll walk. So the bounding boxes are very important. Inverse kinematics is very important. I'm sure there's 1,000 things I'm probably forgetting to tell you about right now that are very important. But hopefully I can cover them in another video. This video is, like I said, short and sweet, but it's important because I wanted to take time to explain to you inverse kinematic and especially track view and how it works through track view. For example, like I said, the first step is it goes to 20. There's our first step. And remember, I flew with these a while ago, so I screwed them up. The second step goes to 40. But see that kickback right there? I did that earlier. If we reopen the goad, it would not do that. And let's see, 50 to 60 was the run a while ago, right? Wasn't it? What was run? 50 to 60 was something. Walk. 50 to 60 was walk. I think run is right here. 80 to 90. Whew. But in track view, we can check these things, and you will see in track view where they transition between the sequences and where they actually sequence out. I will be building a Herc. I will be actually animating a Herc in a later video, and I will use all these techniques and show you exactly on a vehicle that isn't from Dynamix, on a vehicle that we're actually working on now for the mod that we're doing. I will show you how to do these things in a completely untouched vehicle where I will go through piece by piece and show you how I animated it for the game, and we'll do it and we'll use all these tools at once. One thing you can do is you're going to find out that you can use forward kinematics and you can use inverse kinematics, and you might use them together. You might use a dummy controller to bind a foot because you don't want a foot to move while you move the other leg with forward kinematic. So you can do that. You can actually do a dummy controller, attach it to the left foot, go up there and apply the IK, turn off this button right here, just turn it off, and then animate the other leg, and that foot should stay still. So there's a lot of different things you can do here. Just keep watching the videos, and hopefully I can help you understand it more as I go through it. There's a lot to understand. One thing I forgot to mention, which is very important, and I apologize, is that I have some pages of a book, and they are from a book called Animation Professional 3D Max 2.5. And I've had this book for a long time. But one thing that's very important, a very important tool in your animation is this transform type in tool. Basically, it shows you where your object exists in the time and space of the scene. Okay. Now I'm going to make this this big. If you don't care here, just click that if you want to go full screen. So here's the gold full screen. We're going to rewind her back. Okay. For example, in the book, this foot. They animated these Hercs. They didn't freehand slide these things around. Now you can do that, but look up here in the absolute world. You can see that on the y-axis as I move this, the numbers are going up and down. Okay, now the actual animation of these Hercs was done with this tool, Move, Transform, Type In. And you can actually see right here the value too under the movement tab. Right here looks like a bicycle, motion tab. You can see where the particular dummy controllers are located at. And what you can do here is when you're animating your dummy controllers to control your feet, for example, you see how this is X. Well, right now my dummy controller is sitting at 0.051. So I want to move it forward to 0.062 on the offset world. You want to edit the offset world to change the absolute world. And when you click enter, your dummy controller is going to move. Okay, I don't like that, so I'm going to hit Control Z and I'm going to put it right back where it was because I think I moved it on the wrong axis here. So I'm going to put it on 0.62 again, and I just completely shot it out in outer space. I think that was way too far. See, now it's way up there. That's too far. I want to hit Control Z again. But anyway, these are done with subtle movements, and they're done with a lot of math. Let's say you move this particular block up to, alright, right now this block is sitting at 1. Okay, now I move it on the offset world on axis Y, straight forward, and I move it to 3. And 3 comes about right, no, this block here, I'm sorry, this block. This will be the first leg to move. So I type in 3, and this block slides up to here. So when I type in 3, this block slides up to here. Well, okay. Boom. Okay. So I've slid that block up to there when I type in 3. That means that leg, and I've got my sliders set on, don't pay no attention what the goat's doing. I got my sliders set on 20. I've got my animate button on. Okay. I've got my inverse kinematics button on, and I've slid that up to 3, and my gold has stepped up to here. Okay, now if that is step 1 at 3, you know that my next step, which will be this leg, all I have to do is go to the Y and step in and type in 6. The next step, that will slide this controller up beyond this leg and put me in the correct pose for my next step, if the gold was moving as it should, which it's not. You can see where I jacked up the animation there. I'll show you this later on when I start working on my own particular model. And also too, I want to scan that book pages in for you that goes over this topic very clearly. For example, I'm going to reload the gold again, if you don't mind, just a moment here. There we go, and there's the old gold for us once again. Okay, and what I want to do is I'm going to delete all of the animations out of the gold, every one of them, by going to track view, opening it. I've got everything selected, and click this delete all. Select all the objects first and click delete all, and that's just going to kill every bit of the animation on everything. Now there's no track, so there's no animation. Okay, now the one thing that the starsiege Hercs do is they have to move forward and backwards. Now if you want to get the forward and backward movement exactly right, what you'll do is you can animate, you will actually import a base A64 from one of the Hercs, preferably, you know, whatever. I can use the APOC in this or whatever I want. It's going to move exactly the same, but you'll import the base A64 into your scene by merging it in, File, Merge, and for example, select this, and you'll see the base A64 in here. Merge it in, and then link your parts up as according to the hierarchy as this is right now. So your base A64 will have a hierarchy similar to this one. Now this particular gold has no animation, so what I want to do here is I want to go to my tab with the yellow triangle and stuff, and I want to just click this where it unhides the helpers, okay, because I want to see those, and I want to click on unhide all, okay, and there's the helpers, but these helpers are dead because I killed the animation to them. So let's go back once again and let's just delete everything that we don't need. I mean, I'm not going to use these base A's and all this stuff, and I'm not going to use the sequences right now. All I want is, oops, I delete the dummy controllers, I'm sorry. I just controlled Z to undo what I did, and I need the dummy controllers. I'm going to find them. Alright, here's some dummy lefts and here's some dummy rights. That other thing was for the ears, the dummy ears, the big square one. So that was actually connected to the ears. So let's just go ahead and let's just keep the dummy controllers. Alright, I know that my first step in this particular Herc and every single Herc is on frame 20. So I have my little boxes attached to my feet, as you can see here. Actually I don't. I must have killed those two. Nope, right there. Bind to the following object, dummy left. Okay, so we got our first step set to 20. And that's good. And what we need to do is click the animate button, and you'll notice that we don't have any sliding forward and back motion. So let's go ahead and let's just slide it forward a little bit, and let's select everything, edit, select all. Let's don't there's a few things we don't want to select. Let's don't select any of these sequences. Matter of fact, we don't need any of those. And let's I don't know why they're all back on there. Hold on, I'm gonna delete those out. It's just gonna make it harder on us if we don't. Base B32, hold the shift button, that selects all. And let's go ahead and keep the dummies here. And let's select everything except for those, and let's just hit the delete button and get rid of all that. Okay, there it goes, it's gone. So I'm going to go ahead and just make this full screen, I'll be honest with you. And I'll tell you something else I'm going to do. I'm going to change my view. I'm going to go from perspective view up here where it says perspective, and I am going to go to, I think I'm going to go to my left, and I'm going to do it smooth and wireframe. There we go, that's much, much better. A little bit too close for me though. So here we go. We're going to select everything we got here. Let's just pretend this is our Herc. We made it. So let's just select everything except for our dummy controllers. Let's don't select those. If I had the base A brought in right now, it'd be a different story, but I don't. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to worry about this right now. I'll cover it in a different video. Right now, I want to show you what inverse kinematics can do here. We got our first step set at 20, so let's do a first step with inverse kinematics here. That's the wrong way. We need to do it on we're going to move this on a x-axis. So alright. And we're just going to pull this one back. And right there, we have a swinging motion. Okay. Now, our first step went to 20, so at 10, what we're going to do is we're going to pull that up on a z-axis to give us our first step. Hopefully. If I can get a hold of it. Now I'll show you what it would do if I imported the base A64, which I'll do now. I'm going to turn off the animate button. I'm going to merge in from starsiege crapola here, a starsiege Hercs. Let's use a base A64 from an APOC. There's the base A64. We're reusing parts. That's what all this is about. We're going to delete the old one that was in the inside of here. I'm going to take the base A64 that I got from the APOC and I'm going to align it with the center of the, I don't know, let's say, I'll just align it with the center of the pelvis. That's okay. X, Y, Z, somewhere around in that area. And I'm going to have to reattach everything to it. So what I want to do here is I want to hit my select tool. Okay, and I know that the cockpit goes to the base A, the head does. Don't select that because it's under the head. Don't select that because it's under that. So what we want is things that are aligned to the head here. The right thigh, the pelvis, and the left thigh. So we're going to select all these things and we're going to select and link them back up to the base A64 and hit link. Now, there's our first step and we're moving along in the movement of the apocalypse as it should be. And we can go to step 20 here, and let's just go ahead and let's just click on our animate button once again, and we'll see if we can just go ahead and move that up on a when we hit our select tool. We're going to move that up on a Z axis, but we're not going to do it with that. We're going to do it with this, and you can use these also as well. So the first thing we have to do here is we have to hit our move tool. If your transform type in doesn't work, you have to move. You have to hit one of your tools up here. Like if you want to scale something with your transform type in, which is how you need to scale it, just hit the scale button. Now I can scale the foot. But what we want to do is move that foot up on a Z axis. Okay. So I'm actually just going to use. Well, can you tell me where I made a mistake? Do you? I'm trying to transform the foot and not the dummy. The foot itself has no animation, remember? So let's move the dummy up. And we might be moving it also on the wrong axis. If you look at the axis here, it says Y is up. So let's try to move it up on Y. There we go. Okay, now let's apply the IK. Wow, that looks crazy, don't it? But we have a very strange up and down type motion here. Somewhere along the line we got our boxes screwed up. Anyway, I know this isn't a perfect explanation, and you need to look over the papers I'm going to put on here, which will tell you the correct way to do it, and they are for 3D Max 2.5. But this is a basic general overview of something that I've been fooling with for a very long time. I feel that if someone picks it up, they can learn quicker than I can, hopefully, and they can bring a lot more light into the subject. But this has been IK Inverse Kinematics as far as I can tell you. I can animate with this particular type of animation technique. It's just very tedious and it takes a while. Now I can take a Herc and I can do the restraints. I can import dummy controllers off the feet of an APOC and I can bind them to the feet of my Herc, and I can apply IK, and I've already done this, and my Herc will walk just like an APOC will. I've already done it and it works. So that's how they did it for these vehicles. The key in doing that is getting your perimeters set perfectly, your lock perimeters. Everything has to be set perfectly. And if you can do that, then you can copy the walk sequences of the other Hercs. But a lot of these new vehicles that we're making now have their own type of walk sequence. They're not going to be copies of the old one. They're going to walk their own walk, talk their own talk. So we don't want that. We want them to be individual. We want them to be a part of us and have a part of us in them. So we will be animating them. I will be animating them, or S10 will be animating them the way we want them to walk, the way they were envisioned. So hopefully with them it'll be a new era of vehicle animation for Starsiege and beyond. So we're going to expand this into another engine, hopefully. But thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment in the forums, and feel free to wait around for the next video. Thanks a lot.